My name is Rachel. Welcome to my... Oh, God, I did that wrong. Um, this is my book club. Welcome to my book club. Vampires are my special interest book club. We recently finished a book called Dracula's Brood, edited by Richard Dalby. I don't know why I'm showing you the blank cover. It's an anthology of short stories, all vampires. Dracula's Brood. Not related to Dracula, but vampires. And each story comes with a blurb about the author. And what I find interesting about this particular book and these particular blurbs is that the time period, these are all late 1800s to early 1900s. Let's see. The first one was published in 1867, and the last one, 1940. So there's a lot of, literary things I don't know about, which I find fascinating as a lover of vampires. There's a whole world of vampires I don't know about, because I've read a lot of, contemporary urban fantasy, which is more popular in the last 20, 30 years than the last 100. So I thought, because we're between books and we like to dabble in silly nerd shit when we're between books, that we could dabble in the bibliographies of the authors of these vampire stories and just see what the literary supernatural world was about when these were published. And I don't know, just like I said, be a nerd. Being a nerd is fun. For me, at least. Oh, you're late? You're not late. I'm late. I forgot to say that. Sorry. I normally do these lives at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, but I just forgot. I was too in the mood to make soup. I started making my soup in the crock pot slow cooker thing last night, and it was finally ready to eat, and I got so excited I completely forgot about this thing that I do on Sundays, which is talk about vampires with a bunch of nerds. So sorry I'm late. Thanks if you're here. And I didn't really prep very much, so we're just going to be doing this together. There's going to be some pauses. I don't know if there's anything else I need to say. Let's freaking start, right? Hold on. I do have one pulled up in the 3 minutes I had before I started streaming. I looked up one. Let's go over the bibliography, not the blurb thing first, though. This first guy is William Gilbert, and born 1804 to 1890, is now known only as the father of William Schwenk Gilbert of Gilbert and Sullivan fame. But he was once an important novelist in the 1860s and 1870s. Many of his novels were in the Dickensian, that's how you say it, mold, dealing with the contrast between the lots of the rich and the poor. He also wrote a series of occult and supernatural tales for the Argosy magazine, featuring a strange Italian wizard and astrologer known as the Innominato, an oracle figure consulted by various characters in the stories. The Last Lords of Gardano, one of the best of the mid-19th century tales to feature a vampire, first appeared in the Argosy in a serial from July to September 1867. It was reprinted in Gilbert's collection, The Wizard of the Mountain, for Christmas that year. Bram and Florence Stoker were well acquainted with both Gilbert's father and son, and they were later regular visitors to W.S. Gilbert's beautiful house in Harrow Grimsdyke. W.S. Gilbert, in his early years, illustrated several of his father's works. So what I got pulled up is the Argosy magazine Wikipedia page, because I was interested if this is a thing of specifically supernatural tales, or if it just happened to have supernatural tales maybe published in October or something. Well, it did say July to September. Not quite spooky season, but for some people, spooky season is always. So the Argosy magazine was an American magazine founded in 1882 as the Golden Argosy, a children's weekly. It went bankrupt. He shortened the title to Argosy in 1888 and targeted an audience of the men and boys with adventure stories. In 1894, he switched it to a monthly schedule, and in 1896, he eliminated all nonfiction and started using cheap pulp paper, making it the first pulp magazine. Circulation had reached 500,000 by 1907 and remained strong until the 1930s. The name was changed to Argosy All-Story Weekly in 1920, after the magazine merged with All Story Weekly, another Munsey pulp, from 1929 and became just Argosy. It was the first pulp magazine. That's so cool. In 1925, Munsey died, and the publisher, Frank A. Munsey Company, was purchased by William DeWart, who had worked for Munsey. Sounds like they really struggled to keep it going, which is fair enough. I mean, if it's like cheaply made, cheaply printed, it's probably easy to go into bankruptcy, because how much profit are you really making? But early contributors included Horatio Alger, Oliver Optic, and G.A. Henty. During the pulp era, many famous writers appeared in Argosy, including O. Henry, James Branch Cabell, Albert Payson Terhune, Edgar Rice Burroughs, Erie Stanley Gardner, Zane Grey, Robert H. Howard, and Max Brand. I only recognize one of those people. What did he write? Edgar Rice Burroughs. I'm not going to donate money to you, Wikipedia. Calm down. Tarzan. I thought so, yeah. He did the Tarzan books. Argosy was regarded as one of the most prestigious publications in the pulp market, along with Blue Book, adventure, and short stories. Oh, including science fiction by Ray Bradbury. Cool. So it's sort of well regarded and well known, and it's kind of a big deal to get published in there, while at the same time it's not, because they publish so much and so fast that it's probably like normal to get in there. I don't know if I care about the rest of this. Oh God, the first sentence: in December 1925, Munsey had appendicitis and never recovered. He died. Wow, thanks for letting me know. RIP. It remained a weekly into October 4th, 1941, then switched to an irregular schedule with 2 issues a month. I wonder how many, like, weird-ass stuff was published on here. Pulp era. After the change to an all-fiction monthly format, the Argosy was a men's and boys' adventure magazine, though the Encyclopedia of Science Fiction describes many of the serials in the first decade or so after the change as still only a little above juvenile adventure stories. Okay, so what I'm going to look up next is the Argosy magazine supernatural stories. Ghost stories from the Argosy magazine. So there is a collection of ghost stories. Mary E. Penn is an enigmatic figure. Nothing whatsoever is known about her other than the fact that she wrote several stories for late Victorian periodicals, most notably the Argosy, a monthly miscellany associated with the sensation novelist Ellen Wood. Okay. Is that her collection of stories, or did she collect the stories? The Fantastic in the Argosy, 1931. Argosy in the 1930s had no problem with science fiction or horror, or more often fake horror, where the truth proves to be something normal. In the best tradition of Anne Radcliffe, science fiction tales were usually published only one piece an issue, sometimes a short story or a novella or a serialized novel, but multiple off-trail pieces rarely appeared in the same issue. When Death Went Blind. The Man with the Pinpoint Eyes. Some of these are collected, some of them not. It's hard to tell with Google these days. Jan of the Jungle. Jan of the Jungle. Okay. Maybe horror stories? I mean, I could just look up the obvious vampire, duh, but... Vampire back cover, Argosy Weekly, May 1930. Oh no, it's gone. Looks like the same listing. Yeah. Open books page. Magazine collections. Argosy Magazine, the world's oldest and greatest name in pulp. Why is it like .uk though? I thought it was an American thing. Maybe it's not. It's probably not official. Argosy is a digital all-fiction publication of modern pulp, horror, fantasy, and science fiction, as well as reprints of famous classics, updating the format of the Argosy for the modern day, but remaining true to its roots. It's available on Kindle, Nook, Kobo, iPad, and many other e-reader devices through Smashwords and Amazon. Okay. The name Argosy has a long history. The first magazine to go by that name was founded here in Britain in 1865. The more famous American version followed in 1882 under the stewardship of the pioneering Frank Munsey. It is from him that we take our greatest influence. But as a British company, it is the original Argosy and its 1926 revival in whose footprints we follow. Okay. Buy now. What are we buying? Volume 1. Oof, that is rough art. There's only 2. It must not have been that popular. How old is this website? How do you know that? I remember trying to learn that when we learned how to like cite websites in school, but my God. No, never mind. I'm out. I don't understand what that means. Yeah, they stopped publishing stuff in August 2019. Blog, August 2019. There we go. The Argosy Pulp Magazine Collection by Charles Wood. Okay. I don't think they're gonna have what we're looking for. So somehow one of us has to become the collector of original the Argosy from America 1980s collector of their vampire stories in the supernatural ones. There is apparently a ghost one somewhere. Maybe it was on Goodreads. And apparently this Nook for Web. Nook, a version of Argosy Pulp Magazine collection, which are... God knows what's in there. Isle of the Undead. I'm getting lost in a rabbit hole. Vintage pulp horror at its best. This is a classic horror novella from the golden age of pulp fiction, which headlined the front cover of Weird Tales. The writing, plot, and illustrations will delight any hardcore fan of pulp fiction in general and horror pulp fiction specifically. Maybe that's something... Argosy. Oh, I misspelled it. Oh. Archives? Wait. It would help me. The online books page. Oh, shit. Oh, God. This is something we can actually do. Well, sort of. Let's just click this random 49. The Argosy. Available books. Damn. That's something to do one day. Just bookmark this and come back and read a random issue and then I don't know, cheer when we find something supernatural or something. Oh, it wasn't one link. It was all one long link. Okay. Interesting. Internet Archive has a lot of shit on it, huh? Whatever Hath a Trust is. A semi-dual story. Wolf of Ehrlich. $1 slipover dress. A velvet or all wool serge. Damn. Give me that. What do you owe your wife? Do you remember the promises you made when you wooed the girl who is now your wife? Have you forgotten the scenes your fancy painted? That home of your own, a real yard for the kids, a maid to lighten the household burdens, a tidy sum in the bank, a wonderful trip every summer. She has not forgotten. She still hopes that you will make true these dreams. She still has faith in you. You don't want to disappoint your wife and make her life a burden, do you? You want to put the light of happiness in her eyes. You have in you the power. What is this? American school? Are we going to school to make our wives happy, or is she going to school? I don't know. No. A big raise in your salary. All right. It's telling you to go to school to make your wife happy. Okay. Random ass ad. Okay. I feel like we could move on from this. Because it doesn't look like there's people who have done this work. If we want to read vampire stories from the America's first pulp fiction magazine, we have to collect them ourselves, unfortunately. And it turns out there's plenty to read to figure that out. I don't know. Tell me in the comments if you'd be interested in scrolling through that one day when we're between books or just bored or something. Something to do. Okay, let's move on to the next blurb. I don't think there's anything else in that dude's story. Okay. The last words of Gardono. There we go. Eliza Lynn Linton, born 1822 to 1898, was, in Rider Haggard's opinion, one of the very ablest and keenest intellects of her time, and will, I think, be reckoned in its history. She was equally renowned for her novels and her journalism, and was chiefly concerned with the position of the modern woman, writing many essays on women's place in society. The Fate of Madame Cabanel appeared in her collection of tales Within a Silken Thread, 1880, and is a cogent study of primitive superstitions. Belief in witches and vampires was still very widespread in the 19th century, especially in remote backwaters. A similar case occurred in Ireland 15 years after the story was published, when Bridget Cleary was tortured and murdered by her own family, who thought she had been possessed by a demon or fairy changeling. Huh. I don't think there's anything to read about in here except this Bridget Cleary person who was tortured for being a changeling. The fuck? Nothing to do with vampires. I'm just a nerd. Bridget Cleary. There's a whole page about it. Damn. Wait, you're wrong about podcasts at an episode about it? Bridget Cleary is not known today, but her case at the time was absolutely a media sensation with a bunch of racism against the Irish. For those that do, 1895, Bridget Cleary was an Irish woman who was killed by her husband in the community in 1895 because they thought she was a fairy. I don't feel competent enough to dig into that because I've listened to some episodes of the You're Wrong About podcasts, and they're very smart, and I'm just a person. I'm a person who likes to stream and all I do is talk about vampires. She was an Irish woman who was murdered by her husband. She was either immolated or her body was set on fire immediately after her death. The husband's stated motive was his belief that she had been abducted by fairies and replaced with a changeling, which he then killed. The gruesome nature of the case prompted extensive press coverage, and the trial was closely followed by newspapers across Ireland. That's some true crime shit we don't need to look into. Moving on. Okay. Phil Robinson. That's a familiar name. Why is that a familiar name? Philip Stuart Robinson, 1847 to 1902, a leading naturalist and author born at Chinnar, India. Always signed his work as Phil Robinson. He was a pioneer of Anglo-Indian literature, and his many books include In My Indian Garden, Tigers at Large, The Valley of Teetotum Trees, etc. Several of his stories contained vampire elements, including The Man-Eating Tree, Medusa, and The Last of the Vampires. She didn't react to her name. The Man-Eating Tree first appeared in his collection under the Punka in 1881. It was one of the earliest tales in the subgenre dealing with bloodthirsty plants and vegetation. Of later examples include Fred M. White's The Purple Terror and E. Nesbitt's The Pavilion. Interesting, but I don't think I am interested in anything in here. Yeah. Oh, this one's for a poetry. Vampire poetry was widespread in Eastern Europe, especially Moldavia, Romania, and Hungary throughout the 19th century. Occasionally, some of this poetry found its way into the British popular magazines, of which The Vampire is a classic example. Vasile Alexandri, 1821 to 1890, was a Romanian lyric poet born in Moldavia and the first important collector of Romanian popular songs. The Vampire was published in the English Illustrated magazine. Bram Stoker would certainly have read this piece, as his elder sister, Matilda, contributed an article on Sheridan and Miss Linley to the same volume. It is funny to me how they're always like, no, see, this deserves to be in the collection because, like, Bram Stoker probably knew the guy, maybe. They're like, oh, we're going to include it because he probably read the story, maybe. Let's see. English Illustrated magazine. Yeah. Or I want to know about vampire poetry. Eastern European vampire poetry? What result is that gonna get us? Polish vampires? University of Iceland. A thesis. Influence of Eastern European folklore on vampire portrayals in John William Polidori's The Vampire and Bram Stoker's Dracula. Welcome to my stream. Random name I definitely cannot say. Nitten. Your thesis is on YouTube. Eastern European folklore. Would that include poetry? Probably. Eh. Nine fantastic facts about European vampire literature. Nowadays, we're fascinated with vampires, from the sparkly heartthrobs of teen sensation Twilight to the hapless vampires attempting to navigate the modern world and what we do in the shadows. In the latest season of the You're Dead to Me podcast, host talks all things fanged and caped with expert blah 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 to learn all about the origin of the modern vampire. Vampires have not always been sexy pale goths. Medieval people may actually have believed in vampires. Early vampire poetry. Romancing the Gothic. All the Gothic, all the romance, all the time. When you think famous literary vampires, your mind might dart to Dracula, or the sapphic readers might head straight for Carmilla. Your inner eye might also be suddenly beset by a horde of sexy, often shimmering vampires from more recent media: Edward Cullen, Blade, Eric Northman, Akesha, Lestat, Damon Salvatore, Celine. It happens. Just let your mind roam. These examples, of course, have more ancient forebears, both in... This is just a blog, but... I'm not sure where I'm going with this. I don't know. Just like a collection. a academic leaning, I don't know, something with its own bibliography, something we can dig into, which isn't just Wikipedia vampire literature. But I don't think we're gonna get that from just going, Eastern European vampire poetry? Let's just Google that and see what comes up. Like, a lot of nonsense. We're not really even sure what we're looking for. Yeah, okay. We're gonna move on. We're gonna go to the other part in this little blurb. The, English Illustrated Magazine. To once again, look for a collection or a whole bunch of links. Something probably on Internet Archives or something. English Illustrated Magazine. Was a monthly popular magazine published in London in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. It published both fiction and nonfiction. Ran for 359 issues between October 1883 and August 1913. Features included travel, topography, and a large amount of fiction, and were contributed by writers such as Thomas Hardy, Henry James, Emeric Hulme Beeman, Stanley J. Wayman, and Max Pemberton. Illustrators, I don't care. When it began publication, it was the only illustrated competitor to Castell's magazine. Wow, this is not much in here, huh? Wait, oh. I can't see shit. Contained many articles of travel and topography, but also copious fiction. In some ways, this was the British publication which pointed the way towards the later Strand magazine. Authors include blah, 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 blah. So Wikipedia pages source this random blog that probably came about in like 2005. My God. Publishers, editors, prices. What are the Harvard University? What the fuck? Are these like cataloged? No. Content. Oh my God. That's so many words. English Illustrated Magazine. Fry's cocoa. Pure concentrated cocoa. I want some cocoa. Pretty. Poet. Coaching days and coaching ways. Dr. Swift. Well, get your own cocoa. Get me some cocoa. Okay, yeah. Looks like what you expect. A magazine with pictures in it. Uploaded, apparently, by Harvard University. This is some good art. I say, like I know what I'm talking about. Okay. So fiction and nonfiction. Now, let's stretch our brains and look to see if we can find collections of supernatural stories from this magazine. Horror. Horror and monster illustrated magazines in English for sale. I know it's gone forever, but oh wait, maybe they just mean this. Buffy, Fangoria, anime. It's just anime magazine. Fangora, Monster Bash. Fangoria, sorry. The English Illustrated Magazine, Google Books. What is this random link? The Horror Stories of Joseph Thomas Sheridan La Fanu. Okay, that's not what I want though. I don't know how to search this shit. Horror? Ghost stories? People like collections of ghost stories. Illustrated ghost stories. Oh, it's just a magazine called what? Ghost Stories? Yep. The magazine is called Ghost Stories. The magazine and its makers. 1926 to 1931. Only lasted 5 years. Ghost Stories from Victorian Magazine. Dark Worlds Quarterly. Ghost stories from Victorian magazines are the main source of most ghost story anthologies. Despite this fact, the same old chestnuts get used and reused endlessly. The reason for this is many anthologists never looked in the original versions but at previously collected volumes. Hugh Lamb is the exception. The sad fact means there are literally hundreds of unreprinted stories by unfamiliar authors, and best of all, these tales are illustrated. That is sad. The big boom in English magazines began with the Strand and the railroad taking dominance as a form of transportation. People needed something to read on their 45-minute trip to and from home. Modeling itself on certain American publications, George Newnes's magazine featured a mix of fiction and nonfiction, ordinary and extraordinary, all with illustrations. Yeah, I'm really figuring that out. The little bits of time that I've dabbled into, well, what's this literary magazine and how many people have sifted through its contents to find collections. It's not very often. Makes sense to a degree. Not to rag on Pulp Fiction, but it's not exactly like good. It's more rare to find a good story. So I get maybe not wanting to dig into it for publication because you don't even know if anybody will want to like enjoy the books, the collection you just published. You know what? You get what I mean. But it is still sad. Like, there's so many stories people have written. We're never even gonna know who the real authors are because like they wrote anonymously with pen names, and like how many of them were women? How many of them were people of color? You know, we're never like there's so many things that who knows if we'll ever know, because we don't delve into the originals, you know? The archives. Dig into the archives and tell me who this person is. I'm just being a nerd. I hate losing information like that. It's just so interesting. But this is about specifically ghosts, which is fine. Ghosts and vampires are very related. But yeah. But if we go back, at least there's another page. Like, would it be potentially incredibly boring for us here on this stream, you and me, to pick through like old as shit, archived on Internet Archive, like illustrated English magazines for like 2 hours and just reading like 3 bad stories in a row that have nothing to do with the supernatural? Would that be boring shit? Possibly, but I also think it's really like fun. I think it'd be fun. Okay. We're gonna bookmark this one as a maybe one day. Because there's a lot in here. There's a lot to pick through, a lot to read, a lot to think about. With not the best scanning. Well, I shouldn't say that. It's not its fault that the print is so tiny. And also, I need to zoom in to read it. God, you cannot. Why does that randomly say, "Do not kill me"? Well, it's not that bad. I don't know. Okay. Going on to the next blurb. Screw it. Google. Anne Crawford. F. Marion Crawford's classic, For the Blood is the Life, 1905, is one of the best-known tales of vampirism, but A Mystery of the Campagna, written by his eldest sister Anne almost 20 years earlier, has rarely been reprinted. Anne Crawford, Baroness von Raab, did not pursue a literary career with the same diligence as her siblings, Frances Marion Crawford and Mary Crawford, Mrs. Hugh Fraser, author of A Diplomatist's Wife and Many Lands, and several novels, including The Satanists, a notable study of devil worship in Italy. A Mystery of the Campagna was first published in Unwin's Annual, 1887, under the pseudonym Von Degen, together with her brother's story, By the Waters of Paradise. 4 years later, T. Fisher Unwin reissued Anne's story with another novella, A Shadow on a Wave, and the pseudonym Library series, still under the Von Degen alias. It is undoubtedly one of the most artistic and interesting vampire tales to be published in the decade preceding Dracula, and deserves to be better known. Well, if you wanted to read it, it's probably either I already read it in a previous stream, and it's either public or it's not for copyright reasons. What can we look up from this blurb? I don't think I've ever read For the Blood is the Life from 1905, but that's not what we're going to do today. First published in Unwin's Annual, 1887. The pseudonym Library series. I wonder what that means. They're like, let's just putting a series title and then reprinting all the books written under a pen name, I assume. What an interesting way to go about that. Being like, yeah, we don't actually know who these people are. They're all pen names. Let's reprint all their stories and just be happy about that. I mean, I would assume that people who have pen names don't want to be celebrated in that way in case anybody tries too hard to find out who they are. But what do I know? Okay, Unwin's Annual. Once again, I spelled something wrong. Abe's book. Unwin's magazine? Maybe it's Unwin's Annual magazine. Unwin's Annual for 1886. Unwin's Annual for, wait. 1887, 1886. They only have 2 of them. Okay, looks like you can't actually read what's on here. They're just titles. Why isn't a link for Unwin's magazine popping up? Is it only a Christmas annual thing? What about 1800s? 1880s? T. Fisher Unwin. Was T. Fisher Unwin? What am I looking at? Was founded in 1882 by Thomas Fisher Unwin, also jointly founded the Publishers Association in 1896. His nephew, the more famous Stanley Unwin, began his career by working in his uncle's firm. In 1914, Stanley Unwin purchased a controlling interest in the firm of George Allen and Sons, establishing George Allen and Unwin, which later became Allen and Unwin. Thomas Fisher Unwin retired in 1926, and about 10 years later, J.R.R. Tolkien submitted The Hobbit for publication. Stanley Unwin had his 10-year-old son, Rayner, write a report on the manuscript. Okay. What is T. Fisher Unwin? A London publishing house founded by Thomas Fisher Unwin, husband of British Liberal politician Jane Cobden in 1882. There's a lot of books here. Publishing house. Fashioned a highly competitive company with a reputation for discovering and marketing promising new authors. The company published fiction series such as the Pseudonym Library, there you go, and the Overseas Library, through which promising new authors such as Joseph Conrad, John Galsworthy, W. Somerset Maugham, sorry, could be profitably marketed to a growing middle-class reading public. In the years 1895 to 1898, Unwin published Joseph Conrad's first novel, All Mayer's Folly, and An Outcast of the Islands and Tales of Unrest. In 1897, it published Maugham's first novel, Liza of Lambeth. Okay. So this seems like we're on the right track. T. Fisher Unwin magazine? They got a book series. Adelphi Library Adventure Series, American State Series, Anglo-Italian Library, Century Library, Children's Library, 6-penny editions, shilling novels, nature books. Okay. So, magazine. A Century Illustrated Monthly magazine. Why am I looking this hard? There's definitely not. There's definitely not T. Fisher Unwin horror. I'm looking for like a specific magazine, but like, no. Horror. Vampires. Monsters. Ghosts. Ah! Uncanny Tales? Crawford Marion, second printing. So this is published by T. Fisher Unwin in 1913. Uncanny Tales by F. Marion Crawford. Okay. Title page, blah, blah. I guess I'll word it. The major collection of Crawford's weird tales issued in the U.S. 2 weeks later as Wandering Ghosts. Crawford's reputation rests mostly on his short horror fiction collected posthumously as Wandering Ghosts, but written mostly in the 1890s. Paramount among them is the tale of the suicide-haunted stateroom, The Upper Berth, one of the most reprinted of all ghost stories. Others are The Vampire Story, For the Blood is Life. Oh. Okay. Okay. So that's just Uncanny Tales published by that company. We're not going to get like a collection of horror published by this publishing company. Here's a box set of 80 books, right? Okay. Maybe collection. Throw that word in there for fun. Anthology. Worlds Without End. Does the London publishing house founded by Thomas, the latterly more famous, blah, blah, blah. Works in the World Without End database. The House of Arden, E. Nesbit, H.G. Wells. The Twilight of the Gods and Other Tales. I mean, that sounds cool. But The Twilight of the Gods and Other Tales by Richard Garnett. 1888. What happened to the Greek gods when people stopped believing in them? This fantasy classic speculates by revisiting the myth of Prometheus. 28 parables and fairy tales unfold in medieval China, pre-Islamic Arabia, ancient Rome, and other historic settings. That's cool. Most of them start with the Poison Maid, the Bell of Saint. Why did I start saying I can't pronounce that word? Okay. Thank you, Worlds Without End Science Fiction, Fantasy, and Horror Books website for helping me track down which of these are creepy. A Crystal Age. Crystal Age is one of the earliest science fiction novels which deals with a utopia of the distant future. The first-person narrator, a traveler and naturalist, wakes to find himself buried in earth and vegetation. He comes across a community of people who live in a mansion together, under a foreign set of rules and cultural assumptions. He falls desperately in love with a girl from the community, but the very basis of their utopia forbids his ever consummating his desires. Okay. I'm going to move on from this one. I'm not sure. We're not quite getting results, right? There's no collection of PDF files to read through, and no results for the specific Unwin annual magazine. No results really for Unwin magazine that I can find. And the parent company really just wants to sell me horror books by specific authors, I think. So, I'm going to move on. Is there anything else in this blurb? I don't think so. It's a bunch of names like brother, sister, name of book you wrote, name of book you wrote. Okay, whatever. What is the next one? Julian Hawthorne. Julian Hawthorne, 1846 to 1934, was a busy writer and editor for 60 years, with a penchant for the weird and the fantastic, like his more celebrated father, Nathaniel Hawthorne, before him. One of his best short stories in this vein is the little-known Irish vampire tale, Ken's Mystery, which appeared in his collection, David Poindexter's Disappearance, 1888. Julian Hawthorne was acquainted with Bram Stoker and was a frequent guest at the Lyceum during his visits to London. This tale may have given Stoker some ideas and inspiration 9 years before the publication of Dracula. Stories about vampires in Ireland are particularly rare. See what I mean? They're like, no, see, he probably knew him, right? I mean, they were both writers. In London, maybe? He probably read his story, and then maybe it helped him write his other story. So we're going to include it in the collection. Uh-huh. Yeah. Right. Anyway, I didn't see anything worth Googling in there. Sorry. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Conan Doyle, 1859 to 1930, was a regular visitor to the Lyceum and a good friend of both Henry Irving and Bram Stoker, who presented Doyle's first play, A Story of Waterloo, to great critical acclaim at Bristol in September 1894. To my own mind, Waterloo as an acting play is perfect, and Irving's playing in it was the high water mark of histrionic art, declared Stoker later. In the same year as Waterloo's premiere, Doyle's classic novella of psychic vampirism, The Parasite, was published as the first volume in Constable's Acme Library series. The second and companion volume was Bram Stoker's The Waters Moe. Both volumes are adorned with attractive decorations by Lawrence Houseman, A revealing interview with Conan Doyle by Bram Stoker appeared in the Daily Chronicle in February 1908. Okay. Constable's Acme Library. Who the fuck is Constable? What is an Acme What does Acme even mean? I only know Acme is the thing that crushes creatures, cartoon creatures. Is that real? Ugh. Constable. Acme Novelty Library book series in order. Acme Library. Archibald Constable and Co. So, Archibald Constable and Co.'s Acme Library. AKA Heinemann's Acme Library. The Acme of Success. The Acme Library series does not seem to have survived past its initial offering of 6 titles in 1921. Really? Because this seems to be earlier than that. Anyway, pricing is included on a common... That's just not accurate, though. We're not looking for Heinemann's. We're looking for Constable. Archibald Constable and Co. Started business in 1795 as a rare book dealer. Undertook publishing no later than 1800. Took A.G. Hunter as partner in 1804 under the name Archibald Constable and Co. It's not the same thing. Series? Acme Library. Series? Oh, author Arthur Conan Doyle. Encyclopedia. Yeah, see? 1894, The Parasite, The Acme Library, Volume 1. So it is a Constable and Co. Archibald Constable. The complete Acme Novelty Library book series in order. We get the question all the time, what order should I read the Acme Novelty Library series? We would recommend you read them in order by series number. Yes, I believe you. Second Sale by World of Books. You will absolutely get the question, what order should I read the Acme Novelty Library series? All of the time, to the point where you have to include it in your blurb. What is Acme Novelty Library book? Oh, Acme Novelty Library. It's a comic book series. That's not correct. Constables. Year. It's not giving me a year. 1894. 1890s. Openlibrary.org. Constable and Company Limited. Herman Melville. What? Internet Archive. Of course, we're back on Internet Archive. What? Albert and Charles Boney, New York, 1925. Copyright by Albert and Charles Boney, Inc. Is that even the same company? I don't know. Constables. When in doubt, add quotation marks. Fine Editions Limited. Antique books. How did we end up here? I don't know. Let's look. Find Acme. Oh. Arthur Conan Doyle. The Parasite. Price $500. Not surprising, but damn, $500. First volume in Constable's Acme Library series. So it does, like, exist. But even having, like, a comprehensive list, probably impossible. A series of series. So, yeah. Once again, not helping us find further vampire books. It said we're getting kind of lost in the sauce of it here. That is the risk we take when we just keep fucking going down the rabbit hole. I'm very intrigued, though, by all... God, there's so many book publishers that have lived for a couple years and burned down to nothing, and we just didn't care enough to archive anything. All right. Mary Elizabeth Braddon, 1835 to 1915, is now recognized as the liveliest and most productive of all the 19th century sensation novelists. After the tremendous success of Lady Audley's Secret in 1862 came Aurora Floyd, Eleanor's Victory, Sir Jasper's Tenant, and nearly 70 other popular novels. She was a close friend of Bram and Florence Stoker for many years. When she wrote to Stoker on June 23rd, 1897, congratulating him on Dracula, she added, "We will talk of it more anon, when I have soberly read and meditated thereupon. I have done my humdrum little story of transfusion and the good Lady Duquesne, but your Bloofer lady, Miss Braddon's Good Lady Duquesne, appeared in the Strand magazine for February 1896, finally illustrated by Gordon Brown, son of Fitz. It was not reprinted in any of her subsequent books." How sad. But we have read it twice now on this channel. So, let's see. Strand magazine. The Strand Mystery Magazine. Strand Magazine was a monthly British magazine founded by George Nunez, composed of short fiction and general interest articles. It was published in the United Kingdom from January 1891 to March 1950, running to 711 issues, though the first issue was on sale well before Christmas 1890. Its immediate popularity is evidenced by the initial sale of nearly 300,000. Sales increased in the early months before settling down to a circulation of almost 500,000 copies a month, which lasted well into the 1930s. Strand Magazine. The Sherlock Holmes short stories by Arthur Conan Doyle were first published in the Strand in the UK. Some of the stories were previously or simultaneously published in US magazines, while several were first published in the United States in the US edition of the Strand Magazine a month after being published in the UK edition. Okay, cool. A number of short stories by Agatha Christie were first published in the Strand in the UK. Cool. A whole bunch of names. Well, if this place is known this well, surely horror stories. Give me a collection of horror stories. The Strand Mystery Magazine. I don't know what... Was it renamed to the Strand Mystery Magazine? I got quiet. I want a collection. Strange Tales from the Strand Magazine, containing 29 stories of the weird and uncanny, all originally published in the Strand. This collection is an enthralling mix of horror and the supernatural, unnatural desire, disasters, madness, and revenge. We read of a germ that turned the world blind in Edgar Wallace's The Black Grip. In a sense of the future, the world's supply of oil gives out, cars become obsolete, and after 3 months we have returned to the days of horse-drawn carriages. Okay. Promise. There's promise here. But my brain is melting because I usually stop streaming by now, even though I started late. So I think I'm gonna log off. Oh, okay. Let me move things around. Yeah, okay. Thank you for watching. I'm sorry this is so short. I'm sorry I started late. I'll try to do better next time. We do these streams on Sunday night at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I usually read stories, but when we're between books, we go a little crazy and we act a little bit like nerds and we look at boring shit nobody else cares about. So that's what we're gonna do next week, probably. I don't feel like starting a new book yet. I will see you then if you're so inclined. Again, thank you for being here. I greatly do appreciate it. And yeah, repeating myself, it's time to log off. Good night. Bye. Thank you.